The chandeliers above the Imperial Crown Hotel shimmered like cold stars, throwing white light across crystal glasses, polished marble, and the smiling faces of Lagos's most ambitious elites. Waiters in black gloves moved quietly between tables. Cameras flashed. A jazz band played softly in the corner. On the giant LED screen behind the stage, one name kept glowing in gold. At the center of it all stood Tunde himself. Tailored tuxedo, expensive watch, easy smile. One hand in his pocket, the other wrapped around a champagne flute like he had been born for rooms like this. And standing 3 steps behind him, wearing a simple emerald dress she had ironed herself that afternoon, was his wife, Nia Adeyemi Balogun. She wasn't standing there because anyone had asked her to join the spotlight. She was standing there because for 8 years she had been the reason Tunde had one. When his first business collapsed, she sold the gold bangles her mother left her so he could pay rent on a smaller office. When he wanted an executive MBA, she worked double shifts and wrote half his application essays at the kitchen table. When he said he needed space to grow, she swallowed her loneliness and smiled anyway. Tonight was supposed to be the reward, his promotion gala, the night they would finally celebrate everything they had survived together. At least, that was what Nia believed. Until she noticed the whispers. Until she noticed that women she had greeted warmly were suddenly avoiding her eyes. Until she saw Tunde's mother, Mama Kemi Balogun, staring at her with the kind of satisfaction people wear when they know a secret that is about to hurt someone else. And then there was the woman in silver, tall, flawless makeup, diamond earrings that caught every light in the room, one hand resting on Tunde's arm with far too much comfort. Sade Okoro. Nia knew that name. Everyone in Tunde's office knew it. Head of branding. Young, glamorous, camera-ready. Nia told herself not to be foolish. But then Tunde looked at Sade the way he used to look at her years ago, like the rest of the room had faded. That was the moment Nia's stomach tightened. The host called for silence. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "before our honored executive gives his remarks, Mr. Balogun would like to share a personal announcement." Applause rolled through the room. Tunde smiled. Smooth, calm, practiced. He lifted the microphone. "Thank you, everyone. Tonight is very special to me. Not just because of my promotion, but because I believe in stepping boldly into a new season." A few people laughed softly. Nia forced a smile. Then Tunde turned. Not to his wife, to Saad. He reached for her hand and brought her forward. The room changed instantly. People stopped breathing the right way. Glasses froze halfway to lips. Even the band seemed to lose its rhythm. Nia stared. Tunde looked at the crowd, then back at Nia with a coolness she had never seen so naked on his face. "I think honesty is better than performance," he said. "And tonight, I'm done pretending." Mama Kemi folded her arms. Sade lowered her eyes modestly, but the corner of her mouth lifted. Tunde took an envelope from inside his jacket, turned toward Nia, and walked across the stage until he was standing directly in front of her. He held out the envelope. There, in black ink, was her name. Nia. She didn't move. His voice dropped, but the microphone still caught every syllable. "Sign the papers. Let's end this with dignity." The room erupted into a silence louder than sound. Nia looked from the envelope to his face, as if her mind were begging reality to correct itself. "Tunde," she whispered. He leaned closer. "You don't belong in this life anymore. I've outgrown the version of us that made sense when I had nothing." It felt as though the floor had tilted beneath her heels. Mama Kemi stepped forward, not even pretending kindness. "My son needs a woman who matches his future," she said sharply. "Not someone he has to drag behind him." A few heads turned away in embarrassment. Others stayed fixed on Nia with the cruel fascination people save for public heartbreak. Sade smoothed an imaginary crease on her dress. Nia's fingers finally reached for the envelope, but not because she accepted what was happening. Because if she didn't hold something, she might collapse. Tunde stepped back beside Sade, already done with the wreckage he had created. "As I was saying," he told the audience, smiling again, "tonight marks a new chapter." Applause came slowly, weakly, but it came. Nia stood in the middle of a room full of wealth, perfume, camera light, and polished lies, holding divorce papers her husband had just handed her like a waiter presenting a menu. No one came to help her. No one, except an elderly female attendant near the back, who gave her one look that said everything words could not. "Walk out with your spine intact." And that is exactly what Nia did. She did not scream. She did not throw a glass. She did not slap Sade or beg Tunde or defend herself to the room. She simply lifted her chin, turned, and walked through the crowd with the slow grace of someone refusing to hand her enemies the final satisfaction. Only when the hotel doors shut behind her did the first tear fall. Outside, Lagos was humid and alive. Cars moved. Streetlights glowed. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. The city had no idea that a woman's entire life had just been split in half. Nia stood on the pavement, clutching the envelope to her chest, then laughed once, a small, broken sound. 8 years. 8 years of building a man who had just introduced her replacement under a chandelier. By the time she reached the apartment, it was after midnight. She didn't switch on the lights. She sat on the edge of the bed in darkness, still in her dress, still wearing the earrings she almost hadn't bought because they cost too much. The divorce papers lay open beside her. The words were clinical, efficient, already signed by him. It was as if he had erased a marriage the way people cancel a reservation. She thought of the years she had hidden her own dreams to keep his alive. The bakery she once wanted to open. The graduate scholarship she turned down so he could relocate for work. The child they almost had before the miscarriage neither of them ever fully talked about. She thought of all the nights she had listened to his fears and stitched his pride back together with patience. And she realized something terrible. Tunde had not just betrayed her. He had used her strength as a staircase. At dawn, Nia was still awake. Her phone rang. She nearly ignored it. The number was unfamiliar, international. It rang again. And again. Finally, with dry eyes and a numb voice, she answered. "Hello?" A measured male voice responded. "Good morning. May I speak with Ms. Nia Adeyemi?" "This is she." "My name is Kojo Mensah. I'm calling from Mensah and Kwarteng Fiduciary Chambers in Accra. I apologize for the urgency, but we have been trying to reach you regarding a private inheritance matter." Nia almost hung up. "I think you have the wrong person." "We do not," he said gently. "Your late grandmother, Madam Abina Mensah, named you specifically in a sealed succession directive. We require your presence in Accra today, if possible." Nia frowned. "My grandmother died when my mother was young." "That is the story you were given," Kojo replied. "Please come. There are documents you need to see." The line went quiet. For a few seconds, All Nia could hear was her own breathing. Then she asked the only question that made sense. Why now? Because the final condition was activated yesterday evening. He paused. By your husband filing for divorce. Nia gripped the phone so tightly her knuckles whitened. 3 hours later, carrying one suitcase and wearing a plain navy jumpsuit, she boarded a flight to Accra, with no idea that the woman who had entered that plane would not be the woman who returned. Accra greeted her with sea wind, heat, and the smell of salt and traffic. A black vehicle was waiting. No logo, no unnecessary display. The driver took her to a quiet coastal estate hidden behind old stone walls and flowering trees. It did not look like the home of someone obsessed with showing off wealth. It looked like power that had learned the value of privacy. Inside, the air was cool. Portraits lined the walls, women in kente, men in old tailored suits, shipping yards, factories, classrooms, solar fields. At the far end of a long teak table sat 3 people. Kojo Mensah, a gray-haired woman in a white linen suit named Mrs. Ama Boache, chief legal advisor, and a stern, silver-bearded man introduced only as Chairman Dube, trustee. They did not waste time. Kojo slid a leather folder across the table. Madam Abina Mensah did not die when your mother believed she had, he said. She disappeared from public life for strategic reasons after political instability threatened several of her businesses. For decades, she operated quietly through trusts, holding companies, and cross-border partnerships. Nia stared at him. I don't understand. Ama Boache leaned forward. Your grandmother built one of the most quietly influential private groups on the continent. Logistics, agro-processing, cold chain transport, solar infrastructure, women-led enterprise financing, port warehousing, education endowments. Chairman Dube opened a file and turned it toward her. Page after page of figures, maps, ownership structures. Ghana, Kenya, Rwanda, Senegal, Côte d'Ivoire, South Africa. Nia blinked. This can't be real. Kojo nodded slowly. It is real. And according to the final structure of the succession plan, you are now the majority-controlling beneficiary of Meridian Ubuntu Holdings. Nia let out a stunned breath. How much is it worth? The room went still. Ama answered. Conservatively, more than $13 billion in assets and strategic holdings. More importantly, it controls livelihoods for tens of thousands of families. Nia pushed the file back as though it burned. No, I can't do this. I don't know anything about running an empire. Chairman Dube's expression did not change. Your grandmother anticipated that response. Kojo reached for a smaller envelope, old and cream-colored, sealed with dark red wax. Before she died, she left this letter for you. It was to be opened only if your life collapsed in a way that forced you to meet yourself. Nia's hands trembled as she broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter. Her grandmother's penmanship was sharp, elegant, disciplined. Nia, if this letter has reached you, then pain has done what comfort never could. It has stripped away illusion. You were not chosen because life was kind to you. You were chosen because even in obscurity, you served, endured, and remained soft without becoming weak. Wealth in careless hands becomes vanity. Wealth in disciplined hands becomes shelter. I built institutions. You must decide whether to inherit money or continue purpose. If you walk away, no one will condemn you. But if you stay long enough to become more than what wounded you. Abina Mensah. Naya read the letter twice, then a third time. For the first time since the gala, her tears came without humiliation. Not because she felt saved, because she felt seen. Kojo gave her options. She could liquidate portions of the estate, appoint temporary managers, and disappear from public responsibility forever. Or she could enter a 3-month stewardship period, silent, private, unannounced, during which she would study the business from the inside before deciding whether to lead. Naya asked for an hour alone. She walked through the estate gardens, past mango trees and stone benches warmed by afternoon light. She thought of Tunde, of the room that had watched her be discarded, of the version of herself that would have begged to be loved properly. That version had not boarded the plane. By sunset, Naya returned to the table. "I'll do the 3 months," she said. Chairman Dubé finally smiled. "Good. Then tomorrow, you start at 5. The next morning, Naya was not taken to a luxury office. She was taken to a cold chain warehouse outside Tema Port. Hairnet, safety vest, steel-toe boots. By 6 o'clock, she was watching produce shipments being sorted for regional distribution. Mango crates, pharmaceutical refrigeration units, export manifests, fuel efficiency reports, worker attendance systems. No one bowed when she entered. No one treated her like an heiress. And that, Naya would later say, saved her. For the first 2 weeks, she observed more than she spoke. She learned how one delayed shipment could ruin a farmer's entire season. How solar battery storage in remote districts kept clinics alive. How predatory lending crushed women-owned businesses faster than drought. How executive reports often disguised suffering with neat language. At night, she studied financial statements until her eyes burned. Kojo arranged tutors in corporate governance, infrastructure financing, commodity risk, and cross-border regulation. Amma taught her how to read not just contracts, but motives. Chairman Dubé taught her how silence in a boardroom could be more powerful than clever speech. 3 months became 6. 6 became 12. Nia traveled relentlessly. She stood in a cassava processing facility in Kumasi and noticed that the women on the night shift lacked transport home. She approved a safe shuttle system within 48 hours. She visited a solar mini-grid project in northern Kenya and spent 4 hours listening to village women explain why energy access meant girls could study after sunset. 2 months later, Meridian Ubuntu launched a continent-wide after-dark education initiative. In Kigali, she sat with software engineers building payment rails for small traders and asked why transaction fees were still punishing market women more than major suppliers. The pricing model changed that quarter. In Dakar, she met fisher families losing income to broken storage chains and commissioned marine cold storage hubs along the coast. She never announced these visits in advance. She never arrived with a camera crew. And slowly, the company changed. Not because Nia wanted revenge, because once you have been humiliated publicly, you develop a sharp instinct for invisible pain. The press first noticed her in year 2, not from gossip pages, from numbers. Margins improved, corruption leakages shrank, employee retention rose, scholarship funds doubled. A logistics subsidiary once dismissed as too rural to scale became one of the group's strongest arms after Nia shifted strategy toward regional resilience instead of prestige contracts. Business publications tried to photograph her, but she rarely gave interviews. When one magazine finally caught a clear image of her leaving a manufacturing summit in Nairobi, head wrap, charcoal suit, expression unshaken, the headline called her the Iron Woman of Quiet Capital. The name spread, then evolved. By year 3, continental media had another phrase: Africa's Iron Queen. Meanwhile, in Lagos, Tunde Balogun was enjoying a very different kind of visibility. For a while, public betrayal seemed to work in his favor. Photos of him and Sade filled society pages. New apartment, new car, new curated image of power couple success. Sade knew how to dress for cameras. Tunde knew how to feed them. But shiny stories often hide structural cracks. The company that had promoted Tunde into regional leadership was expanding too aggressively. He chased optics over fundamentals, signed inflated vendor deals, ignored compliance warnings, began borrowing influence rather than building it. He had mistaken applause for substance. And applause, unlike integrity, cannot carry debt for long. By the 4th year, rumors began. Delayed salaries, internal audits, a failed acquisition. Shareholders asking hard questions in rooms where charm had no currency. Sade, once delighted by status, grew restless when the invitations slowed. Mama Kemi blamed jealous enemies. Tunde blamed market conditions. But privately, late at night, when the apartment was too quiet, he sometimes thought of Nia. Not because he missed her enough to deserve redemption, because he had begun to understand the difference between a decorative partner and a stabilizing soul. Still, pride kept him from saying her name aloud. 5 years after the night of the gala, the Pan-African Industry and Innovation Summit announced its headline sponsor, Meridian Ubuntu Holdings. The event would be held in Kigali and draw ministers, founders, banking chiefs, logistics leaders, development agencies, and institutional investors from across the continent. Tunde needed that summit more than anyone knew. His company was hanging by a thread. If he could secure a strategic partnership or emergency facilities agreement with Meridian Ubuntu, he might still save his position. He prepared obsessively. New suit, rewritten pitch, careful language, controlled desperation. Sade did not attend. By then, their relationship had become a polished shell, with nothing living inside it. The summit hall was immense. Clean lines, giant screens, simultaneous translation booths, rows of flags, and enough influence in one room to move markets by lunch. Tunde sat in the 3rd section, scanning the program booklet. Then, he froze. He had missed the final keynote listing. There, in black print, keynote address, Nia A. Mensah, Group Chair and CEO, Meridian Ubuntu Holdings. For a second, his mind refused to process it. Nia? His Nia? No. Impossible. But the initials, the surname, the timing. The chill in his chest told him what pride still wanted to deny. Around him, people were already speaking her name with respect. She turned that group around without selling its soul. Her rural industrial model is being studied now. I heard she reads every labor impact report herself. They say if she gives you her word once, you can build on it. Tunde's throat tightened. The room dimmed. Music swelled. A voice announced, "Please welcome one of the most influential business leaders on the continent, Ms. Nia Mensah." And then she walked onto the stage, not in glitter, not in revenge, in power. Her gown was structured black, with subtle gold threading at the shoulder. No excess, no pleading for attention. Her natural hair was wrapped elegantly. Her posture was calm, measured, impossible to ignore. The audience rose to its feet before she reached the podium. Not because of spectacle, because respect, when earned deeply enough, becomes instinctive. Tunde stood too, but slowly, like a man standing inside his own sentence. Nia looked out across the hall. If she saw him, she gave no sign. When the applause ended, she began to speak. "Thank you," she said. "I accept this welcome not as a personal crown, but as proof that institutions can still be built with conscience." Her voice was richer than he remembered, grounded. Years had sharpened it. "I was once told," she continued, "that visibility is what makes a person valuable. That if the room does not applaud you, then you have not become anything worth noticing." She let the silence settle. "I now believe the opposite. The most important work often happens where cameras do not stay long enough to watch." Faces lifted, pens moved, translators leaned in. She spoke about supply chains and dignity, about industrial growth that did not feed only urban vanity, about women who built economies from roadside stalls and underfunded workshops, while policy language pretended not to see them, about energy access, about ethical scale, about the danger of confusing prestige with contribution. Every line sounded lived, not borrowed. Then her tone softened. "Years ago, my life broke in a very public way. At the time, I thought humiliation was the end of identity. I thought if people watched you be discarded, then perhaps your value disappeared with their witness." Tunde could not breathe properly. Nia continued. "But pain is not always a grave. Sometimes it is an audit. It shows you what was real, what was borrowed, and what was waiting in you before the world had language for it." The audience was utterly still. "I did not build because I wanted to be seen again. I built because too many people's futures depend on whether those with power know the difference between ownership and stewardship." Applause erupted, then built, then became thunder. She did not smile immediately. She let it pass through the room like weather. When she finished, the standing ovation lasted nearly a full minute. Some people wiped tears. Others simply nodded, the way people do when a truth lands exactly where it should. Tunde remained standing, but his hands stayed by his sides. The woman he had humiliated under a chandelier was now being honored under continental flags. And what struck him most was not her beauty, not her wealth, not even the scale of her power. It was this. She had become unshakable without becoming cruel. That was the part he would never be able to imitate. After the keynote, security and aides guided Nia toward a private networking lounge. Tunde made his decision before courage failed him. He moved through the corridor, past delegates, through one glass door and then another, until a security officer stopped him. "Invitation only, sir." "I know her," he said. The words tasted pathetic. From inside the lounge, Nia turned. Their eyes met for the first time in 5 years. She said something softly to the guard. He stepped aside. Tunde entered. For a moment, neither of them spoke. This close, he could see what time had done. Not softened her, refined her. Nia folded her hands in front of her. "Hello, Tunde." No anger, no tremor, just recognition. He swallowed. "You look—" He stopped himself. The wrong sentence would reveal too much. You've done incredibly well. Nia gave the smallest nod. I've done meaningful work. That matters more. He looked down, then back up. I owe you an apology. Yes, she said. You do. No rescue. No false easing of his discomfort. He inhaled slowly. I was arrogant, cowardly. I let ambition turn me into someone I wouldn't have respected when I was younger. What I did to you was unforgivable. Nia studied him. Then don't ask me to forgive it quickly, so you can feel clean. His eyes lowered. He had deserved that. After a pause, he spoke again, more honestly this time. I thought success meant becoming the kind of man who could leave anything behind. I didn't understand that the strongest things in my life were the things holding me together. A corner of Nia's expression shifted, not into softness, but into clarity. You didn't lose me because you became powerful, she said. You lost me because you confused elevation with worth. The words hit harder than accusation. Tunde nodded once. There's something else, he admitted. My company is in trouble. We were hoping to speak to Meridian Ubuntu about... Nia raised one hand, and he stopped. There it was, the old instinct, to reach for her strength when his own had failed. She had seen it too. A faint sadness passed across her face. Do you know what hurts most, Tunde? She asked quietly. Even now, part of you came here hoping the woman you discarded would help carry the consequences of the man you became. He had no answer. Nia took a breath. I will not enter any personal arrangement with you. That chapter is closed permanently. He nodded, shame burning through him. But, she continued, if your employees are at risk because of failed leadership above them, my team can review the operational units that still have value. We do not rescue ego. We do protect livelihoods where possible. Tunde stared at her. Mercy. Not for him. For the innocent people downstream from him. It was somehow more devastating than rejection. Why? He asked hoarsely. After everything. Nia's voice was steady. Because I did not survive humiliation just to become another version of it. For a long moment he could not speak. Then finally, I never knew who you were. Nia looked at him with calm finality. No, she said. You only knew who I was when I was giving. She turned as her advisors approached with documents and schedules. The conversation was over. But before she left, she looked back once. Take responsibility, Tunde. It may be the first honest investment you make. Then she walked away. And this time, he was the one left standing in silence. In the months that followed, Meridian Ubuntu did exactly what Nia had promised. Not a vanity bailout. A disciplined, worker-centered acquisition of the viable logistics divisions in Tunde's collapsing company. Thousands of jobs were preserved. Predatory contracts were stripped out. Pension contributions were honored. Regional transport systems were rebuilt on cleaner terms. Business analysts called it brilliant. Employees called it a miracle. Nia called it duty. As for Tunde, he resigned before the board could publicly force him out. The newspapers were unkind, but for once he did not blame them. Sade disappeared from his life with the same speed she had entered it. Mama Kemi, stripped of the social prestige she once weaponized, learned that gossip does not pay legal bills. And Nia? Nia kept building. She launched the Abina Futures Network, funding technical schools for girls in industrial communities across West and East Africa. She expanded women-led freight financing so traders could scale without surrendering ownership to predatory middlemen. She opened maternal clinics near transport corridors where women workers had long been treated as disposable. She created an executive fellowship that required every senior leader in her company to spend 2 weeks each year working at ground level in the communities their decisions affected. Some investors thought that was sentimental, until returns proved ethics could outperform vanity over time. Years later, a journalist asked her during a rare interview, "When people call you Africa's Iron Queen, do you like the title?" Nia smiled for the first time in the conversation. "I understand what they mean," she said. "But iron alone is not enough. Iron can build a bridge or a cage. What matters is what your strength is for." That quote spread everywhere. But the people who loved her most were not online commentators or glossy magazines. They were farmers whose produce no longer rotted before reaching markets, schoolgirls studying under solar light, women entrepreneurs whose first major loan did not require humiliation as collateral, workers whose jobs survived because one woman refused to let personal pain shrink her public imagination. On certain quiet evenings, when her schedule allowed, Nia returned to the coastal estate in Accra where the journey had begun. She would sit beneath the mango trees with her grandmother's old letters and listen to the ocean breathe against the shore. Not every wound had disappeared. Some losses never become beautiful, but they can become useful. And perhaps that is a deeper form of victory. Because the truth was this: the night Tunde handed her divorce papers, he thought he was ending a story. He did not realize he was introducing the world to a woman it had not yet learned how to measure. He saw silence and mistook it for emptiness. He saw patience and mistook it for dependence. He saw kindness and mistook it for lack of options. He was wrong on every count. Nia had never been small. She had simply been hidden inside survival. And when life stripped everything false away, what remained was not a broken wife, not a discarded woman, not a shadow left outside a ballroom door. What remained was discipline, vision, mercy without weakness, power without performance. A builder, a steward, a queen forged not by comfort, but by fire. So if you ever find yourself humiliated by people who benefited from your loyalty, remember this: public rejection is not proof of private worthlessness. Sometimes the hand that pushes you out of one room is the same hand that accidentally directs you toward the door meant for your real name. And when that door opens, do not waste your life proving yourself to those who mocked your beginning. Build something so rooted, so necessary, so alive with purpose, that your peace no longer needs their witness. Because the greatest comeback is not being begged to return. It is becoming so complete that returning is no longer even a temptation. And somewhere in a city full of lights and loud promises, a man who once mistook cruelty for progress still remembers the woman he humiliated under gold chandeliers. Not because she came back for revenge, but because she rose high enough to prove that dignity, once awakened, can outlast every room that failed to recognize it.